All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to do another demonstration for you. And today we're working on Ghost Spider, a character from the Marvel Universe. If you watch the movie Spider-Man Into the Multiverse, you'll recognize this character. She's from another dimension, and when Gwen Stacy was bitten by the radioactive spider instead of Peter Parker. And it's going to be a simple design. We're just doing the head and torso and a little background. So we're going to start with the head, and the head is just a simple oval. And it's towards the top of the page. It's not at the top of the page, but it's towards the top. And it's about 2 inches high, 2.5 inches high. And we're going to add a spine. And that spine is also going to act as our line of symmetry. So it looks like a balloon or a lollipop right now. Just a simple start. We're just mapping things out, making sure everything's going to be in the right place. We're going to drop down here and create a collarbone. And that collarbone down from the chin, enough to leave room for a neck. And it has a slight bend to it. And this distance between the spine to the edge is the same on both sides. These dots would represent the shoulder joints. Then I'm going to add a U shape connecting those shoulders. It's kind of like a bucket. And that bucket represents the rib cage, and that's where the heart and lungs and all the internal organs go. So we're creating the idea of a skeleton without actually drawing the skeleton. And this distance between the shoulders is pretty much the same as this distance from the collarbone to the bottom of the rib cage. And you can test that and make sure that that's about the same distance, and that'll keep you from going too short or too long. From this point, we're just going to kind of taper that bucket into the waist. Because remember, we're just doing a head and torso on this one. In the waist, and then there'll be hips right about there. All right. So as you know, for those of you who are familiar, Ghost Spider has a hood. And the hood is going to start kind of right about in the forehead. And then it's going to angle down or scoop down on both sides. It's going to be pretty wide, and there's some design elements, some webbing design elements on the inside. So we got to make sure that we go well beyond the head as we draw the inside of the hood. Kind of looks like a cobra to a degree. And then the hood, the top of the hood itself is pointy, but it's not pointed. It doesn't come to a triangle point. It is rounded at the top. It's going to be a little bit bigger than the head itself. So the head was just a guideline. We're still going to use that shape when we add the eyes and the chin and everything else, but we're just kind of throwing the hood in. Again, the distance between the side of the face and the edge of the hood is just enough for us to be able to draw those design elements of the webbing and the costume details. And we'll get to that in just a moment. We're going to give her a neck. And the neck's not supposed to be real thin, not supposed to be real wide. She is a teenage girl, so we don't want a real thick neck, and she's not, we don't want a real thin neck either. But that kind of sits there and is going to be part of helping us establish our hood and our design there. All right. The eyes are typical Spider-Man eyes. Spider-Man himself has changed costumes over the years, but those eyes are always pretty much the same. And so we're going to start, again, using that spine, that line of symmetry. We're going to make 2 dots, which kind of represent the corners of those eyes. And we're going to angle up at about 45 degrees on both sides. And then kind of a Nike swoosh to finish. Making sure that they are roughly the same shape. Okay, you can make a line going across here so that you know that you have gone deep enough on both of them. Spider-Man has a real thick black border. Ghost Spider does not. And then we're going to kind of change the face a little bit. I always have a tendency of making my faces a little bit too round. So I'm going to trim some of that off, bring the cheeks in, and then make the chin just a little more pointy. So I'm going to drop that down in order to do that. All right, we're going to ink this and color this. So this first stage is just pencil sketch. Erase what you don't need, fix what you need to fix, make your changes here. Once we start inking, it's going to be very difficult to make those changes. So the inside of the hood that I spoke about is again a web design. So these lines are going to go just radiating out. About the same distance apart, but they will gradually get a little higher, a little more slanted, and then you will add these webbings. And they're all going the same direction. So you're creating this radial pattern inside the hood. And you do the same thing on the other side. Yeah, it's going to be pink and purple when we color it. There are some neck muscles. Necks actually have quite a few muscles in them, but we don't spend a whole lot of time developing those because we don't want to draw a super muscular neck on anyone unless you're drawing somebody like the Incredible Hulk, I suppose. All right, so collarbone is about here, and we're going to kind of finish that. I'm not going to go all the way out to the shoulder joints, but we're going to see a little bit of an indentation here. And then we're going to also draw the traps, which is the top of the back, but we see it as it connects to the shoulders. And the shoulders will come out just like this, just a little bit. Not too broad. Again, remember she's a teenager, so we don't want to make her look like a bodybuilder. She has these repeated triangles on her costume, and they start kind of like in the armpit or close to the armpit. And so we're going to use the collarbone as a starting point. And if these are the same distance, and they are, then we know how to locate our scallops. And this is, again, these are going to be webbed. They're going to be colored pink, and they're going to have a web design on them, just like we did up in the hood area. So we're going to start here and work our way down. And then this line will be continued down as we develop the chest area. And now this spine here, this line of symmetry, is very important because it will help us balance our chest on both sides. We want it to be roughly the same shape and proportion. again, use this horizontal line to make sure that you're dropping the chest equally on both sides. Keep working until you get it. These shapes here, these first scallops, are going to have that web design in them. So we start from the corner and work our way down. And add the webbing. Again, this is just a repeated pattern, one that most Spider-Man fans are familiar with. And then these scallops are repeated once again here on the inside. Not quite as high as the first ones, and they're not going to be webbed and they're not going to be pink. These are going to be black with the highlight of blue. But I want to make sure that these points are at the same place. And make sure that when you do these scallops that these lines here are curved. You are creating a contour of the form. So if your triangle here is just straight up and straight down, then that's going to flatten your form and will no longer look three-dimensional. So make sure that those lines of the scallops are curved. There's an inverted triangle here towards the center. So once again, our spine and line of symmetry comes in very handy. And it goes to a point, again, there's a slight curve to each of those lines. It's not just straight down and straight back up. From here, the diaphragm, or the bottom of the rib cage, is slightly curved as it then tapers into the waist. Make her thin without being emaciated. And then just a suggestion of some hips on either side. All right, if you're interested in doing a background for this, actually let's add some arms first. Shoulders not too broad. This line here will continue down. Again, we want her to look fit, kind of like a gymnast. Very agile and strong, but not bulky. And the shoulder's making her look a little bulky, so I'm going to trim a little bit off of there. Maybe trim a little bit off of here. But there's the bicep, back of the shoulder, or I'm sorry, back of the tricep. And then the forearm will kind of come down. So it's kind of like a fighting stance, or a tough stance, like she's ready to go. Let's give a suggestion of that down there. All right, so as far as a background is concerned, We could do a webbing background very, very easily. And what I would suggest that you do is just create hands like a clock and just kind of break up your space a little bit, like pieces of a pie. And as you go, then you just continue to split those. So these lines will continue to radiate out. And that way, you know, if you just start on one side and move your way around, your angles may veer off the wrong direction after a certain point, or your pattern might be off. So that just kind of helps you keep things consistent. And you have to decide how many times you're going to split this. Nice and light. And then you will, if you want to use a ruler for this, you can. If you're good at just freehanding in relatively straight lines, and the quicker you do it, the easier it is. If you kind of go slow and try to make a perfectly straight line, our hands don't generally work that way. We tend to kind of shake a little bit too much. But if you go quickly, you should be pretty good about making relatively straight lines. And then you just start adding your webbing, and that webbing radiates out and around as well. And don't just go straight across and make like a grid. You're actually bending these lines a little bit to make it look like webbing. And then you just gradually move out. Once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. And then let's do a couple more. I'm not going to see anything on that side. Maybe see just a little bit on that side. And I'll probably work from here and move down along the other side. It's a little design pattern. Okay. Now she's a multi-dimensional character, and if you wanted to add some things like these dots just represent kind of energy, you know, and you can finish this off with maybe some color dots at the end. We don't really have to worry about that right now. Don't have to do a whole lot of shading on this because we're gonna, like I said, next demo will be the inking portion of it. If you want to continue these web design lines downwards, you definitely can do that. I'm going to probably drop these hands down a little bit more. All right, and then from that point, you just kind of look around and fix anything that you need to fix so that when we start the inking portion next time, we will be ready to go. All right. All right, so that's what she's going to look like. Again, simple design, just head and torso. This background is optional. You can choose to leave it just blank, but that kind of gives it some unification there. So thanks a lot for joining me. We will see you next time for our inking portion of this project.